الله بالخير. تتهاوى الأرض تحت الأقدام، رهان يائس يتكشف، مشروع هيمنة يترنح، شقوق داخلية تتسع، نتنياهو المحاصر يمعن في التهور، ترامب برأيه ليس مجرد حليف بل هو أداة الإبادة المختارة، الهدف ليس الاحتواء بل الإلغاء، يجب إزاحة الجمهورية الإسلامية في إيران عن الرقعة الجيوسياسية، زخم إسرائيل الكبرى يقتضي ذلك، ومن هنا ينصب الفخ، قلب ماكر للمفاهيم. برأيهم الملف النووي ليس الأولوية، التهديد الوجودي اليوم بالنسبة إلى إسرائيل هو منظومة الصواريخ الإيرانية البالستية التي يجب تفكيكها والقضاء عليها. هذا كان جوهر لقاء ترامب نتنياهو في قمة مار-أ-لاجو في ديسمبر الماضي بحسب الرواية الإسرائيلية. وتسلح السردية ومسرح الحرب يستعر، تبحر أساطيل عسكرية، تتدفق الذخائر وحصار بحري يلوح، وبعد ذلك تبدأ رقصة الدبلوماسية في الظل. تعرض محادثات حجاب زائف بحسب المراقبين، توافق إيران لكنها ترفض الحديث تحت تهديد السلاح، وبالرغم من اللهجة الحادة والسقوف العالية تنطلق المفاوضات الأميركية الإيرانية في مسقط، والملف النووي الإيراني هو العنوان البارز. ثم ماذا؟ تسوية أم انفجار؟ عقارب الساعة تدق، فالسؤال الجوهري الآن: هل المحادثات مجرد ستار للضربة؟ أين الخط الأحمر الأمريكي الحقيقي؟ وماذا ينتظر المنطقة عقب الانفجار؟ نرحب بكم ونرى ونسمع أكثر مع السيد أليستر كروك، الدبلوماسي البريطاني السابق، مؤسس ومدير منتدى النزاعات في البعد الأقرب. هذه الميادين، وأنا زينب صفار، خليكم ويانا. Salama, welcome to Al Mayadeen. This is Zainab Al Safa for the proximate aspect, and my dear guest is Mr. Alistair Crook, British former diplomat. Alistair, we are absolutely thrilled to have you. How are you doing?
I'm fine, and it is my pleasure to be joining you this evening.
Most welcome, sir. Well, Alistair, what does the barometer of war read today? Are the drums of war still beating in the region?
The barometer is at the moment undecided whether the pressure is going up or it is staying the same, by which I mean looking at the Hebrew press in Israel this morning, going through it, it is clear that there seems to be some disconnect between Israel and Washington. And Netanyahu does not know whether Trump intends to attack Iran and start a war, or whether he intends to pursue, if you like, negotiations, even though the Israelis are ruling out those negotiations as simply a ruse, a possible ruse by Trump to postpone and ultimately delay and maybe never commit to war.
Right, Alistair. Well, America can't afford a full-scale regional war, yet politically can't also back down. Are the indirect talks merely a smokescreen for the strike, or does the ghost of war hide and lie in the details? If so, what details and where, as far as you know, and what would be the Rubicon that, if crossed, would trigger a cascade of events, a flare-up in the region?
The talks, the indirect negotiations taking place, or which have been taking place in Oman, essentially, it's very difficult to see how they could become anything substantive, because Iran has taken a very firm stance that enrichment is not possible, not end to enrichment would not be acceptable. So it does not accept zero enrichment. It does not accept either the missiles or other elements of its relationship with the region should be included in the talks, which, as you recall, the Americans tried to do in the first round, when they produced these mediators, that was Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey. And the aim of that was to sort of insert the Israeli agenda. And that Israeli agenda is that the attack on the missiles is a priority, greater priority than finding a solution on the nuclear issue. So it's very difficult to see how the negotiating track will come to something. When you ask what will that America cannot afford a war, Israel is not asking for a small war. It's not seeking a very small war that would be, if you like Trump's attack on the nuclear installations that took place in January. Instead, what they are looking for is a campaign, a complete obliteration by aerial bombing of Iran, such that the state would be completely destroyed. Now, the consequences of that for America, first of all, can they do it? It's doubtful that they can do it, in my view. I think that they can attack, that it will be something that will last for a period until their air defenses are depleted. But during this time, of course, Iran will respond. There's no doubt about that. They will respond against Israel and against bases and against the so-called Armada offshore the Persian Gulf. So what would be the outcome? Well, I think it would not be a short war. It would be a long war.
Right. But Alistair, as far as you know, who's making policy, DC or Tel Aviv? Israel, of course, as you said, and we all know that, demands total elimination of Iran's ballistic missiles, a requirement designed to kill any deal since Iran will never accept it. Is Netanyahu deliberately blocking Trump's diplomatic exit because Israel wants a US-Iran war that America fights while Israel watches? And if Trump won't override this deal-killing demand, who's really setting American foreign policy here? The White House or Tel Aviv? Who's actually calling the shots in Washington?
Well, you're right. I mean, this has been set up as a trap because if Netanyahu inverted the priorities and said to Trump at Mar-a-Lago, look, I'm not going to tell you they're about to get a nuclear weapon, the Iranians. I'm not saying that at all. That doesn't matter. What matters is the missiles, or the missiles. They have to be destroyed because they're creating an umbrella that is the real security risk to Israel. And that has to be ended. And if you don't include that in the talks and agree the ending and limitations on the missiles, then those talks have failed. And we need to move towards military action to destroy missiles. Who's in charge? Well, clearly Trump came to power with the help of pro-Israeli donors. Now, who he finally is responsible to, we had an interview just released just very little time ago by a former Israeli intelligence officer that was quite clear that really Epstein operated to Ehud Barak or to the Mossad, and he suggested that what was likely to happen if Trump would not accede to this attack on the missile system would be we would probably see a release of more Epstein files or photographs or details to remind him that of his undertakings when he became president.
Why do you think the Epstein files were released now, Alistair?
Well, I think they were released now because the pressures were becoming too great to try and keep them from being released. But they've released them in such a way as to minimize the damage. First of all, they've sort of flooded the information space with 3 million files. And some of them have not been properly redacted. Some have been over-redacted. That means, all the details being eliminated. But also, you can see from it that there is nothing, they claim nothing in them that would require further investigation or prosecution. And this is causing a storm in the United States because while the victims have been blanked out, I mean, it is clear that there were men who were involved in what may have been criminal actions. And why are that not being followed up and being prosecuted?
I will come back, Alistair, to talk about the Epstein files, but I would like to ask you here something, that what does all options actually mean? Gulf states refuse to support strikes, fearing, of course, Iranian retaliation and viewing Israel as the destabilizer. And the U.S. naval assets pushed back from Iran's coast, Russia and China conducting joint exercises with Iran. If regional allies won't participate, the military can't get close enough to strike. And, of course, a multipolar coalition backs Iran's defense. Doesn't all options on the table now advertise American impotence rather than project American power, Alistair?
Well, that's the view that you are suggesting, and a view that many people held. But within the United States, there are many, particularly retired generals and serving officers, who believe in America's invincibility. This is a delusion, maybe, but they believe that that they can destroy Iranian air defenses, suppress their air defenses, and they can produce, if you like, then have air dominance over Iran, and that they can then destroy the country. Now, many people in America dispute that hotly and say that that is wrong. But it would be wrong to misunderstand. It would be wrong to not take into account the fact. And there are more things than that, because not only is there the pressure from AIPAC, which is mounting. I mean, there is enormous pressure mounting on Trump about the missiles, an attack on missiles, from AIPAC and from, if you like, pro-Israeli elements in the United States. And then there is this huge propaganda war that is taking place in the West, where you see in European press and elsewhere stories that are being put out about how the Iranian regime machine gunned to death the protesters in Iran. I mean, these are complete nonsense. This is black propaganda. But all this is mounting the idea that Iran has been butchering its own population is there because it's across all of the, if you like, propaganda outlets of the West to say this story. So Trump has this. On the other hand, Trump has to consider other things, and they are just as important in this military balance. I know you want to stay on the military side, but I'm saying it's not just about the military side, because the other aspect is his falling popularity. His disapproval rating is in the 50s at the moment in the United States. The other aspect is markets. The markets are very volatile. One day they're going up, next day they are crashing, and they are going. And then the third element is the midterms. Trump himself has said, if I lose the House at the midterms, I'm finished. And if I lose the House and the Senate, I will end up in court, and that will not be pretty. So,
but what awaits the region, Alistair? What awaits the region and the world in the aftermath of the explosion?
Well, I'm not a visionary. I have no idea what will be the consequences. But you correctly said, it is if there was a major, if you like, what the Americans call campaign, as opposed to sort of a very targeted strikes. If there is a major campaign, then clearly Iran will go to full war. They have promised that, they will do that, they have the capacity. What will be the effect on Gulf states? Well, for a start, Iran will shut the Hormuz Straits. So the shipping will not be able to go. Any of those Gulf states who have, if you like, provided tacit support for an American attack on Iran will find that their vessels will not be sailing through the Hormuz Straits. Other vessels, too, will not be sailing through the Hormuz Straits. That will have a major impact on energy prices and on the flow of trade, and I will think will have a huge impact on, if you like, stock markets in the United States and Europe
Sure.
as well. So maybe an economic meltdown as well as a military meltdown. That's the point I'm trying to get across. It's not just, it could be a military, if you like, catastrophe, but it could spark an economic catastrophe at the same time. Now, whether Trump can put that aside and still continue the attack depends on this calculus. We just do not know what goes through his mind. And his mind is increasingly erratic. Like, for example, publishing pictures of Obama and his wife. Why did he do a thing like that?
Exactly.
I mean, people are looking and saying, he's not only erratic, but he's showing signs of poor judgment. This is a great danger. Poor judgment by Netanyahu, who's also desperate, poor judgment by Trump, and a misjudgment by Trump, perhaps.
Well, Alistair, in the context of the Epstein earthquake files of utter filth exposing the blackmail currency of the transatlantic elite, what is apparent is that the Epstein circles were not just about twisted individuals. What has been divulged and exposed points to systematic, organized, ritualized practices, pervert practices. Networks of this kind only exist when they are backed by deep institutional protection, whether political, police, judicial, media, even cultural and intellectual ones, unfortunately. This is the logic of power. What do you make of this heinous abomination, Alistair?
Well, of course, it is going to bring down the whole of the Western establishment, ultimately, because when you give up moral values, and you recall at Davos then, Mark-Carney, who was the head of the Bank of England and now is Prime Minister of Canada, said very clearly, the world, the order, the global order, its values, they were always fake. And we knew they were fake, but they were convenient to continue with this fake. Well, in a sense, that is the end of the Enlightenment, end of the whole Enlightenment, because once you remove values, once you remove those narratives and those ideas of value from a society, from that, you just sink into pure nihilism. And the structures the architecture which gives society some sort of moral and political order collapses with it. It's very serious. It's crossing the Rubicon into extreme radical nihilism. And once it becomes exposed like this, why should people observe any moral values if the people below the great elites who've given up on them some time ago, why should they? Why do they not just pursue a sort of total selfishness and to pursue their own wealth at the expense of anybody and everybody? Well, that's what will happen if we have a complete breakdown. So it is very serious what's happened.
Sure, and even today, Alistair, there is an absolutely flagrant rupture between the people and the elites. The people are saying the Supreme Court is not going to protect us, Congress is not going to protect us, the president is the enemy, he is deploying his own army, ICE, in our cities, and the only people who can actually protect us are ourselves. What are the people saying here, Alistair, quickly, if I may?
They're saying no one is coming to save us. There's no one to save us. That's what they're saying. They're looking for someone. They're looking for a savior of some sort, someone to come. They thought it might have been Trump, even though he didn't seem a very likely character. No, they don't believe that at all. No one is coming. The politics are broken. If you like, the morality of the state is seen to be totally corrupted. So what do? Where can they go? Well, it's going to be very difficult to see where they are. America, in some respects, is already taking the next stage of politics, because if elections don't work, if voting for parties don't work, if protesting doesn't work, then politics will be settled on the street. And where that is going to lead, who knows? It's a very dangerous prospect ahead.
Right, Alistair Crook, British former diplomat, a man of consequence. Thank you so much, Alistair, for taking the time. Absolutely a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was good to be with you.
Always a pleasure. اليوم الأسواق الأمريكية تشهد تقلبات حادة، ذعر صامت ينتشر، ليس هناك محفز واضح ولا تغريدة نارية، مجرد انهيار مفاجئ وحاد، وعبء ذوبان الأصول يملأ الفضاء. هذه هي الهشاشة الكامنة خلف لحظة بوتمكن التي تشير إلى زيف واجهة متقنة الصنع مصممة لخداع الناس وإيهامهم بأن الوضع أفضل مما هو عليه في الواقع، لتظهرها على حقيقتها العارية كخداع أو وهم سطحي فارغ. السبب ليس لغزا، إنه سياسة. حرب التعريفات الجمركية انقلبت على صاحبها ترامب، إنها هدف في مرماه. العالم لا يتحمل التكلفة، بل الأمريكيون أنفسهم هم من يتحملونها. 98% من عبء التعريفات الجمركية يقع على كاهل المواطن الأمريكي. الأسعار ترتفع، الدولار يذوي، الحلفاء يلتفتون شرقا. الفرضية التأسيسية تحطمت. سوق أمريكا التي لا تقاوم أصبحت تتجنب اليوم. لذا يبرز السؤال المصيري من بين أنقاض الاقتصاد: هل يستطيع رئيس أفلس صدقيته الاقتصادية أن يجمع رأس المال المالي والسياسي لخوض حرب مدمرة مطلع عام يمهد للانتخابات النصفية الأمريكية؟ من كل الميادين حياكم.